This is a really big deal, even if it doesn't seem like it, so buckle up and get ready for this crazy train of a video. Welcome to Whiteboard Crypto, the #1 YouTube channel for crypto education, and here we explain topics of the cryptocurrency world using analogies, stories, and examples so that anyone can easily understand them. In this video, we're going to explain what Tornado Cash is, what the implications of it being added to the US Sanctions List are, and what it means for the future of dApps that the United States does not like. First off, let's get into the Tornado Cash. Now, before I explain what it is and how it works, I want to share that the actual creator of Ethereum himself has used this dApp many times, per a tweet that he shared in 2020. Now, Tornado Cash is a tool that is run on the Ethereum blockchain, and it's called a tumbler or a mixer. Now, these are just fancy yet descriptive words to describe what it does. We do actually have an entire video on this topic, but to put it simply, Tornado Cash simply mixes your crypto with a bunch of other people's crypto to be able to anonymize it. In other words, it attempts to erase the transaction history of a token. Now, in reality, you can never erase the transaction history of a token, but you can try to do so by using a simple method. Let me explain this with a fun analogy. Let's say you're running from the police. They didn't see your face, but they know that you're wearing a red shirt. This is all that they know about you. What's the best place to hide? Well, it sure would be nice if you had a warehouse full of people that are also wearing red shirts to hide in. You could slip into this warehouse, hang around for a few hours while the police start asking some questions, then you could sneak out a few hours later. The police know that people are entering with red shirts and that they're leaving with red shirts because apparently it was a red shirt convention, and they can't stop people from leaving, so effectively you've hidden yourself by making it impossible for the police to identify you. Now, in this story, just replace police with your neighbor, your mom, or someone trying to sue you, and you can see the other side of privacy. Before we go much further, if you've appreciated how simple that analogy was, feel free to hit the like button. And while you're down there, there's also a link to join our newsletter too. It's absolutely free, and I usually send out emails on my thoughts and research before those become videos, just to get some feedback on them. Sometimes I do giveaways and share very helpful illustrations as well. And when you join, you get immediate access to my DeFi for Beginners video series. So feel free to join below if you think this video is something that you like learning about. Moving on, with crypto tumblers like Tornado Cash, you are doing a very similar activity as running around with a red shirt. Now, there are perfectly legal reasons to do this, such as privacy concerns. Imagine if every dollar bill that you had contained an entire list of where that dollar had been spent. Maybe Walmart, some local drug dealer's name, the vending machine at your local hotel, maybe it was sent overseas to fight a war that you don't approve of, maybe it was sent through campaign funds to a local politician, and then finally it made it back to you. In this case, money sure is more useful when it's fungible, but that's for another video. However, there are also very illegal reasons to do this, such as money laundering, otherwise known as trying to hide money that you got by stealing from smart contracts, or scamming people online. So now that we know how Tornado Cash works and what it's used for, let's get into what the US sanctions are. Basically, there's this organization called the Office of Foreign Assets Control, which is a government agency that investigates who the US should be blocked from doing business with. Obviously, we shouldn't be doing business with criminals, right? Well, they put together this special list called the SDN, or Specially Designated National and Blocked Persons List. And this contains a list of people, groups of people, and things that are now illegal to interact with. Some of these countries include Cuba, Iran, Iraq, and North Korea, but recently, Tornado Cash was added to the list. This means it is now illegal for any US person to engage in trade or perform other dealings with a decentralized application known as Tornado Cash. Now, for starters, this means you definitely shouldn't be using it, but it also means you shouldn't be depositing funds into the contract or withdrawing funds from the contract, even if you put those funds in there before it was sanctioned. But to go even further, it could also mean donating to the project, which is found on Gitcoin, adding code to the project, or even visiting the website. More questionably, you might even be guilty if you're found mining a transaction that interacts with the application. The maximum jail time, if convicted, could be up to 30 years in federal prison. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is crypto. They can't block a decentralized application, right? Well, technically, it is decentralized, and they said it was very difficult to take down or prevent these transactions. However, putting it on the sanctions list is going to have a ton of second-order consequences. Let's get into those. For starters, any tokens used on the platform must prevent usage of that application if possible. So here's one example. USDC, which is a token created by the company Circle, actually has a few functions in their token smart contract to do some pretty clever things. In fact, Clever can block their USDC token from being deposited into any account or being withdrawn from any account on the blockchain level. Now, lots of people don't know this, but USDC is actually quite centralized, and being a US-governed company, Circle is very likely to block any of the addresses associated with Tornado Cash. So now USDC can't be used with Tornado Cash. Big deal, right? Well, there are actually a few other tokens that operate the same way, two of the most used being Tether and Wrapped Bitcoin. Now you might argue, Tornado Cash is still effective for mixing Ethereum though, right? And you'd be mostly correct. However, by being on the sanctions list, there are many people who will be deterred from using it. In fact, Tornado Cash becomes exponentially more useful the more people that use it. So if less people are using it, then it becomes much easier to track those transactions going through it. Back to our red shirt analogy, would it be easier for the police to track you if you went into a room of 10 people or a room of 1,000 people? Now moving on, as I mentioned earlier, you may even be committing a crime if you are mining Ethereum and you process a transaction associated with Tornado Cash. Now one simple way around this is that the Ethereum miner software could be updated with a blacklist or a list of accounts to never process transactions for, which is a totally viable thing to do. And it's very similar to the result of a 51% attack. They just say, here are a list of addresses not to process transactions for, and then the software just ignores them and never processes them. Now this is a very scary thing to do purposefully and will likely remove a lot of trust in so-called decentralized applications. Another second-order consequence this will create is that centralized exchanges may start blocking or reporting any transactions to their accounts that they think may be associated with their sanctioned accounts. Now, of course, when you sign up to these exchanges, they collect your name, your social security number, your address, and basically enough personal information to identify you and your incoming transactions. This will basically get rid of the on-ramps and off-ramps for people to be able to turn their sanctioned money into cash. Now, one other thing worth mentioning is that access to the Tornado Cash website can actually be blocked by your ISP, or the company that gives you internet. They can simply block any Tornado Cash web assets from being delivered to your address. And they can also prevent any DNS domain name lookups from resolving Tornado.cash to an IP address, effectively preventing you from using them. Now, some developers out there might say this simply blocks the user interface to Tornado Cash though. Since Tornado Cash is a smart contract, if you know the contract address, you can still interact with the contract. Let's move on to another topic though. Let's talk about blackmail. What if someone sends you tainted funds? Can someone blackmail you by sending you a large sum to your address? Personally, there have been many situations where I simply just empty out one of my Ethereum wallets over to Coinbase to be able to withdraw, trade, or move that money somewhere else. If I had, say, been sent $5 of Ethereum from a sanctioned address without knowing it, then I would have simply deposited $100, got a $5 gift, and then withdrawn $105. And I would have just assumed that $5 was market fluctuations, when in reality it was someone trying to taint my account. However, if Coinbase has a list of blacklisted addresses and they see that I got money from one of those bad addresses, they might also assume that I was doing business with a bad actor, and they could suspend my account or possibly even keep my funds. This leaves a question of how far back can we reliably trace bad funds? Maybe we set a limit of 100 accounts. Money has to go through 100 accounts before you can say that you're definitely not associated with the dirty money. Are you still liable for violating the sanctions? Well, we could put this idea in effect, but this is a bad idea because I could technically write a script that moves Ethereum between 100 different accounts in a few minutes. So this would be a very easy loophole for someone to perform. Next up, let's move on to a possible solution of these sanctions that some have already thought of. You could fork Tornado Cash, right? Well, the problem with this is that the fork will need lots of money and lots of time. Remember, the more red people there are in the room, the better the protocol works at anonymizing your funds. If there's only $1 million in the next protocol, it won't be as effective as if they could get $100 million locked up in it. As of right now, Tornado Cash has a little more than 400 million locked up in it. One thing to keep in mind is that it seems legislation can't keep up with the rate of new technology. Tornado Cash has been around for a long time. And sure, someone can make Tornado Cash 2.0, which isn't sanctioned, but when the TVL reaches a high enough number, when enough money is locked up into the new version, it'll be sanctioned again, and then again, and again. But there will always be a delay between builders and legislators. One last question I want to leave you with is, what does this mean for Monero? Monero is a privacy coin. It's like if you took every transaction of Ethereum and ran it through Tornado Cash. Well, if the US can add a dApp to the sanctions list, then they can definitely add a coin. This would be very bad for Monero, as it would ensure that all US exchanges remove Monero from their listings, which would greatly prevent people from trading the asset. This doesn't mean it would be the end of Monero, but it would probably not be good for future development or for price action. Wrapping this video up, hopefully you have a better understanding of what Tornado Cash is, what it does, how it's been affected by US sanctions, and what it means moving forward. As I end this video, I want to remind you about that free DeFi for Beginners guide that you can get by going to whiteboardcrypto.com and entering your email. Or you can just click the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you've learned something. And most of all, I hope to see you in the next video.